He spotted her across the sandy expanse, frozen by a craving that defied logic. A vibrant coral skirt embraced hips that stole the air from his lungs. A fitted top displayed a face so captivating it felt like an assault on his senses. When she dismissed his arrogant request for her contact, and turned away without a backward glance, something primal and territorial awakened deep within him. A compulsion so fierce it shook him to his core. He ought to forget her. He couldn't. Within days he materialized at her design studio without warning, ensnaring her in his world through wealth and intimidation, resolute in his pursuit to claim her. Welcome back to Gloria Afro-Korean Stories, my beautiful and amazing family. I'm thrilled to see you here again. If this is your first visit to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and activate notifications so you won't miss any of our captivating stories. Please take just a moment to like this video, drop a comment, and share it with anyone who adores intense romantic stories. Your support truly makes a difference and strengthens our community. Now settle in because today's tale is gripping. Let's jump straight into it. The shoreline extended without end under the blazing afternoon sky. Yellow sand crowded with vacationers and residents. Kang Min-jae positioned himself beside the pier, his two associates maintaining a discreet distance. He'd arrived to monitor a delivery at the adjacent port, but the transaction had wrapped up ahead of schedule. He unfastened the collar button of his midnight shirt, the small ink design on his palm, a coiled serpent glinting in the sunshine as he surveyed the masses with apathy. And then his gaze found her. She glided through the crowd like an apparition made real. Her form an exquisite canvas of shapes that stole his oxygen. The coral skirt caressed generous thighs and remarkably full hips that rolled with every assured stride. Her fitted top decorated with tiny shells and ocean patterns exposed rich bronze skin, and a torso that narrowed before expanding in breathtaking proportion. Her ebony waves tumbled beyond her shoulder blades. And when she giggled at her companion's words, Min-jae experienced the melody strike him like a blow to the chest cavity. He stood motionless, mind blank. His ribcage constricted with something raw and foreign. "Sir." One of his associates regarded him with worry. Min-jae offered no response. He was already advancing toward her, slicing through the throng with unwavering intent. His commanding frame created openings naturally. His defined features locked with resolve. He didn't possess her identity, didn't require it. He simply understood he had to draw nearer, had to perceive her tone, had to obtain something beyond articulation. She positioned herself where ocean met shore, permitting the surf to caress her exposed toes. Her companion had drifted away for photographs. Min-jae materialized from her rear, his silhouette covering her. "You," he stated plainly, his tone deep and authoritative. She pivoted, astonishment dancing across her striking features before her midnight eyes locked with his. For an instant, existence fell silent. She was more magnificent at this proximity. Complete mouth, elevated facial structure, complexion that radiated like satin beneath sunlight. Her silhouette was catastrophic, proportions that made his palms ache for contact. "Pardon me." Her tone was musical, colored with bewilderment and wariness. "Your contact information." It wasn't posed as inquiry. Min-jae extracted his device, offering it in her direction with an air of dominance that typically compelled immediate compliance. Her brows elevated. She observed his costly timepiece, his custom garments, the severity in his gaze that communicated peril and influence. Then she grinned, not charmed, but entertained. Absolutely not. The refusal impacted him like a physical strike. Nobody declined him. Nobody. "You're confused." "I'm perfectly clear," she interjected, her grin expanding. "You're accustomed to receiving whatever you desire, but I have zero interest." She rotated back toward the surf, dismissing his presence as though he held no significance. Min-jae remained immobilized, his jaw locking, rage and captivation battling internally. She'd spurned him, departed, never even glanced behind. He should release this, should erase her from memory. But as he observed her reunite with her companion and vanish into the masses, something shadowy and consuming planted itself in his chest. He'd never craved anything with this intensity until this precise moment. Hours later, Min-jae occupied his high-rise workspace, the metropolis illumination of soul sparkling beneath. He rotated bourbon and crystal, his thoughts replaying the interaction. Her figure, her amusement, her rejection. It scorched him. Locate her, he commanded through his device. Sir, his security chief responded with hesitation. The woman from the shore, coral skirt, dark waves. I require complete information. Identity, residence, profession, relations, associates, absolutely everything. Silence followed. Confirmed, sir. Min Jae terminated the connection and rose, approaching the expansive glass panels. His mirror image gazed back. Glacial eyes, severe characteristics, the countenance of someone who'd constructed dominion through violence and mercilessness. He commanded terror throughout the illicit realm, garnered deference from those reckless enough to pursue his validation. Yet she hadn't trembled before him, hadn't exhibited the slightest impression. It intensified his desire exponentially. Morning arrived with a dossier appearing on his workspace. Min Jae accessed it with restrained anticipation. Her identity was Serena Blake, 26, an emerging clothing architect with her personal boutique workspace in Seoul's center. Born in America, she'd relocated to Korea 3 years prior to train at the Design Academy before establishing her personal collection. She concentrated on bespoke menswear and premium garments for Seoul's privileged class. The photographs within displayed her at runway presentations, in her workspace, engaging with patrons. Each frame highlighted those catastrophic proportions, that luminous expression. Min Jae's digits grazed the photograph's boundary. She was self-sufficient, formidable, gifted, and she would become his. Several days forward, Serena occupied her workspace, modifying a blazer on a display form. The location was her refuge. Material rolls bordered the perimeters, preliminary drawings blanketed her workspace, and daylight flooded through elevated glass panels. She vocalized melodies while occupied, fasteners gripped between her teeth. The entrance bell sounded. Were not available until she rotated and halted. The man from the shore occupied her threshold, radiating even greater threat in the restricted area. He displayed an impeccably constructed charcoal ensemble that accentuated his imposing physique. And those frigid eyes concentrated on her with disturbing focus. How did you discover my location? Her voice emerged less stable than intended. I require formal attire. He advanced inward, securing the entrance behind him. 5 complete sets. Financial constraints don't exist. Serena's pulse accelerated. I maintain a reservation schedule. You'll need to arrange accordingly. I'll provide triple your standard compensation. He approached nearer and she reflexively retreated, her side contacting the workspace. I want you handling them exclusively. For what reason? The inquiry escaped before she could restrain it. His mouth formed something that didn't qualify as a genuine expression. Because your reputation is unmatched. It was deceptive. Both understood this. But Serena also recognized that refusing him twice could prove hazardous. Something in his bearing communicated authority and menace. The variety of man who didn't process rejection with grace. Acceptable, she announced, elevating her jaw. But this remains strictly business, and you'll respect my timetable, not yours. Naturally. His gaze traveled across her form deliberately, pausing on her proportions in a manner that made warmth ascend her vertebrae. Whatever you specify. He departed before she could formulate response, abandoning only the fragrance of premium cologne, and the unsettling sensation that she'd committed a grave error. That night, Serena attempted focusing on alternative assignments, but her thoughts continuously drifted to Min Jae. His intensity, his presumption, the manner he observed her as though possession was inevitable. Her device vibrated. Unidentified number. Tomorrow afternoon at 2. I'll arrive for body measurements. She stared at the message, her stomach knotting. How had he obtained her contact? The following afternoon, Min Jae materialized precisely at 2, saturating her workspace with his overpowering presence. Serena struggled maintaining professional separation as she recorded his dimensions, but her hands quivered marginally when she contacted his shoulders, perceiving the firm muscle beneath costly material. Extend your arms, she directed, her voice controlled despite her racing circulation. He complied, observing her features closely. You demonstrate considerable skill at this. It's my livelihood. You're experiencing nervousness. It wasn't phrased as inquiry. I'm concentrating. She positioned the measuring ribbon around his torso, attempting to disregard their proximity. How his scent created dizziness. His palm captured her wrist delicately. You needn't fear my presence, Serena. The utilization of her identity made her vision rise. His gaze had mellowed slightly, something approximating humanity flickering in their depths. I'm not experiencing fear. She fabricated, extracting herself. Excellent, he released her. Because my visits will be frequent. Throughout the subsequent week, Min-jae transformed into a persistent presence. He materialized during her midday intervals with costly cuisine, dispatched botanical arrangements to her workspace, surfaced at the cafe where she convened companions, perpetually observing from separation. It should have generated terror. Instead, something hazardous stirred internally, consciousness, magnetism, an attraction she refused acknowledging. One twilight, as she secured her workspace, Min-jae emerged from the darkness. Serena's pulse leaped into her pharynx. You're tracking my movements. I'm guaranteeing your protection. He positioned himself alongside her, palms in pockets. This district isn't secure after darkness. I've functioned adequately for 3 years. That preceded your awareness of me. The suggestion suspended heavily between them. Awareness of him signified peril. Signified absorption into something shadowy. What's your objective with me? She ceased movement, rotating to confront him beneath a lamp. Min-jae examined her extensively. Then he advanced nearer, and Serena's respiration halted as his palm rose to relocate a strand from her features. Everything, he articulated plainly. The candor in his tone transmitted tremors along her vertebrae. She should flee, should vocalize alarm, but her physique refused cooperation, mesmerized by the concentration of his observation. I don't possess knowledge of you, she vocalized quietly. You will. His digit traced her facial structure delicately. I'll guarantee it. Then he retreated, abandoning her quaking on the pavement, her complexion burning where he'd contacted her. The subsequent morning, Serena attempted reclaiming authority. She immersed herself in occupation, resolved to complete his garments rapidly and terminate this hazardous situation. But Min-jae maintained alternative intentions. He materialized with coffee precisely customized, which signified he'd been monitoring attentively. He occupied her workspace for extended periods, managing business communications in Korean while she labored. His presence was simultaneously reassuring and disturbing. Why formal attire? She inquired during a peaceful interval, unable to suppress her inquisitiveness. He elevated from his device. What? Why commission 5 custom ensembles when you already display impeccable fashion? A trace of expression crossed his features. Because it guarantees proximity to you. The direct confession made her cardiac rhythm falter. That's calculated manipulation. It's transparent honesty. He rose, approaching to inspect her preliminary drawings. You're extraordinarily talented, Serena. These concepts are exceptional. The praise warmed her despite her opposition. I appreciate that. I'm sincere. His shoulder contacted hers as he inclined nearer to examine a drawing. You should be creating for major fashion corporations. I prefer maintaining my personal workspace, my personal perspective. Independent, he murmured. I detected that quality initially. You don't require anyone. Correct, I don't. That's what generates fascination. He rotated to confront her completely, and suddenly they existed too proximate, his stature and bearing dominating in the compact area. You're not captivated by wealth or influence. You rejected me without wavering. Is that your motivation for this conduct? Damaged pride. His gaze intensified. Negative. This exists because from the instant I perceived you, I couldn't contemplate anything alternative. Because you've infiltrated every cognition, every dream. Because I desire you in a manner that's devouring me. Serena's respiration fractured. The raw concentration in his tone transmitted heat cascading through her physique. That's not, she initiated. Healthy, logical, I comprehend. He retreated, providing her area. But I've never fabricated regarding what I desire. And I desire you, Serena. Completely. Before she could formulate response, his device sounded. He addressed it, his expression transforming to frigid business mode. And Serena exhaled shakily, her thoughts spiraling. Days forward, Serena attended a fashion exhibition at a premium hotel. She'd received invitation from a colleague to establish connections with prospective patrons. She displayed a midnight dress that embraced her proportions. Her waves arranged elegantly. She was deliberating material vendors with a purchaser when awareness traveled along her vertebrae. She rotated and discovered Min-jae across the chamber, devastating in a dark ensemble, his gaze secured on her with possessive concentration. He'd tracked her here. Irritation ignited, but so did something alternative, a treacherous excitement at commanding such concentrated attention. She excused herself and advanced toward him. You need to cease this. Cease what? He transferred his champagne to a circulating server. Tracking me, materializing everywhere. It's essential. His observation descended to her dress, hunger illuminating in his gaze. You appear magnificent. This isn't proper. Probably accurate. He inclined nearer, his tone descending. But I'm indifferent. When I perceive another man observing you, contacting your arm, generating your amusement, it requires everything within me not to fracture his hand. The violent possessiveness should have generated revulsion. Instead, it activated something deep in her core. You're irrational, she vocalized quietly. Regarding you, absolutely. His palm discovered the small of her posterior, burning through the delicate material. Dance with me. Or not. But he was already directing her toward the area where additional couples rotated to gentle melodies. His arm encircled her torso, extracting her against his firm physique, and Serena's opposition dissolved as they relocated together. Why are you executing this? She inquired quietly. Because I communicated to you. I desire everything. His palm distributed across her lower posterior, possessive and warm. Your duration, your focus, your cognitions, your physique, your cardiac organ. You can't simply demand those elements. I comprehend. His mouth contacted her auditory organ, generating tremors. That's why I'm prepared to wait, to demonstrate myself, to earn what I desire. The sincerity in his tone dismantled something internally. She extracted enough to connect with his gaze, searching for deception, and discovering only raw honesty. I don't comprehend you, she confessed. You will. He rotated her delicately, then extracted her back against him. I'll demonstrate exactly who I am, Serena. The darkness and the dedication. And then you'll select. The commitment suspended between them, waited with inevitability. As the night progressed, Min-jae never abandoned her vicinity. He advocated on her behalf, introduced her to influential architects, and projected hostility at any man who observed her excessively. It was possessive and dominating and exhilarating simultaneously. When the event terminated, he insisted on transporting her to her residence. In the rear of his premium vehicle, silence extended between them, saturated with unspoken tension. I'm grateful, Serena articulated as they approached her apartment. For tonight, the introductions. I communicated I care for what belongs to me. I don't belong to you. His palm captured her jaw delicately, rotating her features toward him. Not presently, but you will belong. Then he kissed her. It wasn't delicate or tentative. It was claiming, devouring, a kiss that demanded capitulation. Serena gasped against his mouth, and he intensified the connection, his palm gliding into her waves. Heat detonated through her physique, fierce and undeniable. When he finally extracted, they were both respiring intensely. I should depart, she vocalized quietly, even as her physique screamed to remain. I comprehend. He released her reluctantly. But tomorrow you belong to me again. Serena fled to her apartment, her mouth still burning, her cardiac organ in turbulence. She was descending into something hazardous, something dark and all-devouring. And despite every logical cognition screaming at her to flee, portion of her desired to plunge deeper. The subsequent morning, reality crashed returning. Serena's device vibrated with a message from her colleague. Who was that intense individual last night? He observed you like he desired to devour you. Before she could respond, botanical arrangements materialized. Not a modest collection, but a dominating assembly of midnight roses and coral lilies that saturated her workspace with their fragrance. The card stated simply, "Until tonight, MJ." Tonight. He'd presumed she'd encounter him again. Serena attempted focusing on occupation, but her thoughts continuously drifted to his kiss, his intensity, the manner he observed her as though she was the singular person in existence. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal proportion. That twilight, Minjae materialized at closing duration, as though conjured by her cognitions. "Dinner," he announced without preamble. I didn't consent to Serena. Her identity was both plea and command. "One dinner. Permit me to demonstrate who I am." Against her superior judgment, she consented. He transported her to an exclusive establishment where they were positioned in a private chamber overlooking the metropolis. The meal was exquisite, but Serena barely experienced it, excessively conscious of Minjae's presence across the surface. "Communicate to me regarding your realm," she articulated, positioning down her utensil. "Your authentic realm." His expression darkened marginally. "You're confident you desire awareness. If you desire anything from me, I require truth." Minjae examined her extensively, then nodded. "I operate an organization, import-export documented, but actuality is more intricate. I engage with individuals who function external to regulation. I've executed actions." He paused, his jaw constricting. "I've executed actions you'd probably detest me for. Are you attempting to generate fear?" "I'm attempting transparency." He inclined forward, intensity blazing in his gaze. "I'm not a virtuous man, Serena. I'm hazardous, possessive, and I've damaged individuals who menace what belongs to me. But with you," his tone mellowed. "With you, I desire transformation. You generate my desire to transform." The vulnerability in his confession fractured something accessible internally. "I don't comprehend if I can manage your realm. You're more formidable than you recognize." His palm extended across the surface, palm upward, an invitation, not a demand. "And I'll shield you from the worst components perpetually." Serena stared at his palm, at the small serpent ink design on his wrist, at the scarred knuckles that communicated violence. Then she positioned her palm in his, and his digits enclosed around hers with reverent possessiveness. "One increment at a duration," she vocalized quietly. "One increment at a duration," he concurred. But both comprehended this exceeded an increment. It was a leap into the unknown, into darkness and craving, into a connection that would devour them both. Throughout the subsequent weeks, Minjae became interwoven into the material of Serena's existence. He materialized at her workspace every morning with coffee. He dispatched his driver to guarantee she reached residence securely. He attended every minor fashion event she participated in. A silent, commanding presence that both reassured and disturbed her. But he never pressured for more than she was prepared providing. Until the night everything transformed. Serena was laboring late, completing the final ensemble in Minjae's commission. The workspace was quiet, just the vibration of her sewing apparatus and the metropolis sounds filtering through fractured glass panels. She was so concentrated that she didn't perceive the entrance opening. "You labor excessively." Minjae's tone made her leap. She spun around, palm pressed to her racing cardiac organ. "You generated fright." "I'm apologetic." But he didn't appear apologetic as he approached, his gaze dark with something intense. "It's beyond midnight, Serena. I desired completion." She gestured to the blazer on her workspace surface. "This is the final one." He retrieved it, inspecting her occupation with genuine appreciation. "It's flawless." "They all are." He positioned it down and relocated nearer, until she could perceive his physique heat. "You're flawless." "I'm genuinely not." His digit pressed delicately against her mouth, silencing her. "Don't dispute when I compliment you." The contact transmitted electricity through her nervous system. They'd invested weeks in this careful choreography, constructing trust, sharing fragments of themselves, but never crossing the boundary into something more physical. Now, in the quiet intimacy of her workspace, that boundary felt dangerously delicate. "Minjae," she respired, uncertain if it was a warning or an invitation. He seemed to interpret it as the latter. His palms rose to frame her features, digits stroking her facial structure with devastating delicacy. Communicate to me to depart and I will. Communicate you don't desire this and I'll exit. But Serena couldn't articulate those words because they'd be fabrications. Despite everything, his darkness, his peril, his dominating intensity, she desired him with a ferocity that terrified her. I don't desire you to depart, she vocalized quietly. Something feral illuminated in his gaze. Then his mouth was on hers, hungry and claiming, and Serena melted into him. His palms descended to her torso, extracting her flesh against his rigid physique, and she gasped at the contact. Heat detonated between them, weeks of tension igniting into something unstoppable. He elevated her onto the workspace, positioning between her thighs, and Serena encircled her arms around his neck, drowning in sensation. His mouth traveled down her pharynx, discovering sensitive locations that generated vocal responses, and his palms mapped her proportions with reverent possession. You belong to me, he murmured against her complexion. Articulate it, Serena. Articulate it. I belong to you. She respired and perceived him shudder against her. What followed was a blur of breathless kisses, desperate contacts, vocalized confessions in the darkness. He was omnipresent, his palms, his mouth, his dominating presence devouring her completely. And when he finally transported her to the compact couch in her workspace's corner, positioning her down with surprising tenderness, Serena capitulated to the inevitable. The realm narrowed to exclusively them, his weight above her, his tone in her auditory organ promising eternity. The manner he respired her identity like devotion. It was intense and dominating and flawless. Passion tempered with genuine emotion that made tears slip down her features. Why are you generating tears? He halted, concern flooding his features. Because this is terrifying, she confessed. Because I perceive excessively. Because you've completely demolished my defenses. His digit eliminated her tears. I comprehend. You've demolished mine too. He kissed her delicately, reverently. But I swear, Serena, I will never damage you. I'll incinerate the realm before I permit anything to harm you. She believed him. That's what generated the greatest fear. They made love deliberately, thoroughly, with a desperate tenderness that communicated feelings too profound for articulation. And when it concluded, when they lay tangled together beneath the throw covering she maintained in the workspace, Serena perceived irrevocably transformed. She'd provided him everything, and she possessed no certainty if she'd survive when he inevitably departed. The subsequent morning, Serena woke solitary. Panic seized her chest cavity. The couch was frigid where Min Jae had been, his garments absent, no message abandoned. Humiliation washed over her in surges. She'd been a conquest. Another woman who'd descended for his intensity, only to be discarded once he'd obtained what he desired. Tears burned her vision as she dressed rapidly, her palms shaking. How could she have been so foolish? She'd comprehended his reputation, comprehended the peril, and still she'd permitted herself believing. Her device vibrated. Unidentified number. Emergency assembly. Had to depart early. My driver will transport you to residence. Rest today. Relief and irritation battled internally. He hadn't vanished, but he'd departed without waking her, without articulation. The vulnerability she'd perceived last night transformed into something harder, more protective. She wouldn't become that girl, the one who waited desperately for fragments of attention. She possessed her personal existence, her personal formidability. Serena disregarded his driver and secured a taxi to residence. She disregarded his messages throughout the day. When he contacted that twilight, she permitted it ringing through to voicemail. If he desired her, he'd have to labor harder than this. By the third day of her silence, Min Jae materialized at her apartment entrance, appearing disheveled and almost frantic, an expression she'd never perceived on his controlled features. Why aren't you responding? He demanded the instant she accessed the entrance. I've been occupied. He advanced forward and she reflexively relocated backward, positioning area between them. Something pained crossed his features. What's incorrect? What did I execute? You departed. The words emerged harder than intended. You departed without even waking me. Comprehension dawned in his gaze. I had an emergency. A situation with a shipment that required immediate attention. I didn't desire waking you because you appeared peaceful, and I comprehended if I remained, I wouldn't be capable of departing at all. You could have messaged before departing. You're correct. He operated a palm through his waves in frustration. I'm not proficient at this, Serena. Relationships, feelings. I've never had to consider someone alternative before, but I'm attempting. He relocated nearer, his palms rising to cup her features. That night signified everything to me. You signify everything to me. I'm apologetic, I generated your doubt. The sincerity in his tone fractured her defenses. I was experiencing fear, she confessed quietly. I provided you everything and then you were absent. Never again. He extracted her into his arms and she permitted herself melting into his embrace. I will never generate your doubt regarding how I perceive. You're not a conquest, Serena. You're my obsession, my purpose, the singular element that matters. The intensity should have frightened her. Instead, it made her perceive cherished in a manner she'd never experienced. I require you communicating with me. She articulated against his chest cavity. I will. I commit. But commitments were easier made than maintained. The subsequent few weeks were blissful. Min Jae was attentive, affectionate, and surprisingly delicate for someone so hazardous. He transported her to private dinners, surprised her with thoughtful gifts that displayed he'd been monitoring closely, and invested hours in her workspace just observing her labor with accessible adoration. But fractures began displaying. His device sounded at all hours with what were clearly business emergencies. He tensed during conversations, his tone descending into that frigid, commanding tone that reminded Serena exactly what he was. Men in dark ensembles would sometimes materialize, communicating to him in rapid Korean that she couldn't completely follow. And then there was the jealousy. One afternoon, a male patron arrived for a fitting. He was young, friendly, and he flirted harmlessly with Serena while she modified his blazer. She responded to his humor, professional but warm. She didn't detect Min Jae materialize until she perceived the temperature in the chamber descend. He occupied the threshold, his expression vacant, but his gaze burning with barely controlled fury. The patron detected immediately, his flirtation expiring as he absorbed Min Jae's commanding frame and hazardous presence. I'll return another duration. The patron stammered, practically fleeing. Serena rotated on Min Jae. What was that? Who is he? His tone was deceptively tranquil. A patron. What's incorrect with you? He was contacting you. I was fitting his blazer. She threw her palms up in frustration. This is my occupation, Min Jae. I have to contact patrons, not male ones. He relocated nearer, and she perceived the possessive jealousy blazing in his gaze. Not anymore. Pardon me. Irritation ignited hot in her chest cavity. You don't get to control my business. I'm not controlling. He halted, jaw clenching. I just don't appreciate alternative men contacting you, observing you, generating your expression. That's irrational. I comprehend. He captured her hips, extracting her against him. But when I perceive another man proximate you, all I can contemplate regarding is demonstrating him exactly who you belong to. The raw possessiveness in his tone transmitted unwanted heat through her physique. I'm not a possession. You're mine, he corrected. There's a differentiation. Is there? He kissed her then, rigid and claiming. And despite her irritation, Serena kissed him, returning with equal ferocity. Their chemistry was explosive, undeniable. A force that dominated rational cognition. But afterward, as she lay in his arms on her workspace couch, doubt infiltrated. His jealousy was suffocating. His realm was violent. Could she genuinely construct existence with someone so hazardous, so possessive? Quick pause. If this story has you hooked, tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now back to the story. The response arrived 2 weeks forward in the worst possible manner. Serena was ambulating to residence from a late dinner with companions when the midnight transport pulled alongside her. Before she could vocalize alarm, aggressive palms captured her, extracting her internally. A fabric pressed over her mouth, chemicals sweet and suffocating, and darkness consumed her completely. She woke in a concrete chamber, her cranium pounding, her wrists secured to a metal chair. Fear crashed over her in surges as she absorbed her surroundings. Windowless, vacant except for a singular light source. The smell of deterioration and oxidation. The entrance accessed and a man entered, middle-aged, costly ensemble, frigid gaze. 2 armed guards flanked him. Miss Blake, he articulated in accented English. You probably don't possess awareness of me, but I possess extensive awareness of you. You're Kong Min-jae's vulnerability. Terror spiked through her. I don't possess awareness of what you're communicating. Don't fabricate. You've been perceived with him for weeks. He's obsessed with you. The man expressed, and it was cruel. Which makes you extraordinarily valuable. You won't negotiate for me. You will. Because men like Min-jae possess one fatal deficiency. They love excessively profoundly. It makes them reckless. He nodded to his guards. Maintain her comfortable. She's useless to us, damaged. They abandoned her solitary in the darkness, and Serena's cognition raced. She'd been correct to fear his realm. Now she was compensating the price for drawing proximate to him. Hours passed, maybe a complete day. She couldn't communicate in the windowless chamber. They provided her liquid, but no sustenance. Her physique ached from the awkward position. And terror had provided way to numb resignation. Then she perceived it. Gunfire, distant but drawing nearer. The entrance burst accessible, and one of the guards rushed inward. We need to relocate her. He never completed the sentence. A singular shot sounded and he descended. Serena vocalized alarm. Her auditory organs ringing from the sound. Then Min-jae was there. He appeared like something from nightmare. Blood spatters on his white shirt, weapon in palm. His features a mask of frigid fury. But when his gaze discovered her, something shattered in his expression. Serena. He rushed forward, descending to his knees to sever her restraints with a blade. Are you damaged? Did they contact you? She couldn't communicate, just shook her cranium as tears streamed down her features. He extracted her into his arms and she collapsed against him, shaking violently. I've obtained you, he murmured, his tone rough with emotion. I'm so apologetic. This is my fault. I should have protected you, superior. I should have. Extract her out. A tone called from the corridor. One of Min-jae's men. He elevated her effortlessly, transporting her through corridors littered with bodies. Serena buried her features in his chest cavity, attempting to obstruct out the carnage. He'd battled through an army to reach her. External, more of his men waited with vehicles. Min-jae positioned her delicately in the rear seat, gliding in alongside her, and extracting her back into his arms. Hospital. He ordered the driver. Negative. Serena's tone was just residence. Please. He examined her features, then nodded. My penthouse. It's secure. During the drive, he maintained her so intensely she could barely respire, but she didn't complain. His cardiac organ hammered against her auditory organ, his palms shaking marginally as they stroked her waves, the singular sign of how terrified he'd been. At his penthouse, he transported her to his bathroom and initiated a bath. Serena occupied numbly as he assisted her undressing, his contact clinical and delicate. When she was in the warm liquid, he knelt alongside the container, cleansing the grime from her complexion with devastating care. I eliminated 17 men tonight, he articulated quietly, not observing her. I would have eliminated 100, 1,000, all of them if that's what it required to extract you returning. Min-jae, you should abandon me. His tone fractured. My realm almost generated your death. I comprehended this could occur, and I was selfish enough to extract you in any way. Serena extended out, rotating his features toward her. His gaze was raw with pain and guilt. I'm not abandoning. You should, but I won't. She extracted him nearer, until their foreheads contacted. I was terrified. I contemplated I'd never perceive you again. And all I could contemplate was that I never communicated. Her tone broke. I love you. I'm in love with you, Min-jae. And that terrifies me more than anything that occurred today. He generated a sound somewhere between amusement and sob. I love you. God, Serena, I've loved you since the instant I perceived you on that shore. I've loved you with everything I am. He kissed her then, desperate and tender, and Serena experienced salt. She wasn't confident if it was from her tears or his. When he finally extracted, his palms cradled her features with infinite delicacy. I'm going to marry you, he articulated with absolute conviction. I'm going to maintain you secure. And I'm going to invest every day demonstrating that loving me wasn't an error. It's not an error, she expressed through her tears. It's terrifying and impossible and completely irrational. But it's not an error. He assisted her from the bath, encircled her in soft towels, and transported her to his bed. That night, they lay tangled together, no area between them, two individuals who discovered something precious and hazardous in each other. And for the first duration since she'd encountered him, Serena perceived completely secure. The subsequent morning, Serena woke to discover Min-jae already dressed, on the device communicating rapid Korean. She observed him pace his bedroom, his free palm operating through his waves in frustration. A gesture she'd learned signified serious trouble. When he terminated the contact, his gaze discovered her immediately, mellowing despite whatever crisis he was managing. How do you perceive? He occupied on the boundary of the bed, his palm discovering hers. Sore shaken but alive. She compressed his digits. What's occurring? His jaw constricted. The man who captured you, Park Chin-ho. He's the head of a rival organization. This was regarding territory leverage. I've been managing it, but now he paused, clearly weighing how much to communicate. Now it's war. Fear flickered through her, but she pushed it down. What do you require? You. His intensity made her respiration halt. Secure, protected. I'm relocating you here permanently until this is resolved. I'll have your possessions transported over. Wait. She occupied up, extracting the sheet around her. You can't just determine that. Serena, you were captured from your apartment structure. They comprehend where you exist. I can't protect you there. So I'm supposed to abandon my existence, my workspace. Temporarily. His palms framed her features. Please, I can't lose you. I almost did. And it nearly demolished me. Permit me to maintain you secure. She desired to dispute, to maintain her independence. But the memory of that concrete chamber, the terror, the certainty she'd expire, it was too fresh. And the raw desperation in his gaze undid her completely. Acceptable, she vocalized quietly. But I still require laboring. My patrons. I'll have your workspace secured. Armed guards, surveillance, everything. He kissed her forehead. You'll still possess your business. You'll just possess protection. It wasn't ideal, but it was compromise. Serena nodded and relief flooded his features. Throughout the subsequent few days, Min-jae transformed her existence. Her belongings materialized in his penthouse as if by magic. Her workspace transformed into a fortress with discreet but armed guards stationed proximate. He hired her an assistant to manage logistics so she could concentrate on design. And he was omnipresent, verifying on her constantly, his presence both reassuring and suffocating. One twilight she discovered him in his workspace surrounded by documents and maps, his expression darker than she'd ever perceived. She approached quietly, positioning her palms on his shoulders. Communicate to me, she articulated delicately. He inclined back into her contact. Park Chin-ho isn't retreating. He's relocating against my operations, attempting to force me into a position where I have to select between business. And he halted abruptly. And me. His silence was response enough. Then select business, Serena articulated firmly. He spun his chair around, staring at her in disbelief. What? I'm sincere. Your empire, your men, they depend on you. Don't permit me to become the vulnerability that demolishes everything you've constructed. You're not a vulnerability. He occupied, extracting her against him. You're the reason any of this matters. Before you, I was just surviving, accumulating authority because it was all I comprehended. But now his tone roughened. Now I possess something worth protecting. Someone who makes me desire transformation into more than just a monster. Tears pricked her vision. You're not a monster. I am. His honesty was brutal. I've executed terrible actions. I'll execute more terrible actions to maintain you secure. That's who I am, Serena. And if you remain with me, you'll perceive that darkness up proximate. I comprehend. She extended up, tracing his severe facial structure. And I'm selecting you anyway. He kissed her with fierce gratitude, and she melted into him, her anchor in the chaos. But the chaos was only initiating. The subsequent week, several of Min Jae's warehouses were bombed. 3 of his men expired. Retaliation was swift and brutal. Park's operations crippled overnight. But it wasn't sufficient. Park was escalating, targeting anyone connected to Min Jae, which signified Serena was still in peril. "I require you, departing soul," Min Jae articulated one night, his tone abandoning no chamber for dispute. "Just for a few weeks. I possess a residence in Jeju, secure, isolated. You'll be secure there while I terminate this. I'm not abandoning you." Negative. She occupied her ground despite the fear coursing through her. "I won't be dispatched away while you battle this solitary. We're together. That signifies everything. If something occurs to you because you're stubborn, then it occurs. But I won't abandon you." She relocated nearer, her palms on his chest cavity. "You articulated I make you desire transformation into more than a monster. Well, you make me desire courage. Don't extract that away from me." He stared at her extensively, emotions warring across his features. Then he extracted her into his arms, maintaining her so intensely it almost damaged. "You're going to make me vulnerable," he murmured against her waves. "Negative, I'm going to make you more formidable." She perceived him express against her temple. "How did I ever survive without you? I don't comprehend. How did I?" The tenderness between them was a brief respite from the violence surrounding them. But that night, as they made love with desperate intensity, both of them comprehended the storm wasn't concluded. It was only gathering formidability. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Thursday twilight. Serena was at the workspace late positioning finishing contacts on a gown for a patron's matrimony. 2 guards were stationed external. Min Jae had messaged that he'd collect her in an hour. She was so absorbed in her occupation that she didn't perceive the first gunshots. The entrance burst accessible, and one of her guards stumbled inward, blood expanding across his chest cavity. "Operate," he gasped before collapsing. Terror paralyzed her for a split second. Then survival instinct activated. She captured her device, racing toward the rear exit, but armed men obstructed her pathway. Park Chun-ho occupied among them, his expression frigid and triumphant. Departing so rapidly. He gestured and his men captured her. "Permits, dispatch your boyfriend a message." They extracted her to a transport. Serena battled, vocalizing, but there were excessive of them. This duration they didn't bother with sedatives. They desired her conscious, terrified. The drive consumed 20 minutes. They transported her to what appeared like an abandoned manufacturing facility, threw her into a large chamber with concrete floors and oxidized equipment. Park followed, circling her like a predator. "So Min Jae has captured everything from me," he articulated conversationally. "My territory, my reputation, my profits. So I'll capture what matters most to him. He'll eliminate you." Serena's tone shook, but maintained conviction. "He'll tear this metropolis apart to discover me. I'm counting on it. I possess this location surrounded with sufficient firepower to terminate him." Park crouched in front of her, capturing her jaw roughly. "When he arrives for you, and he will, I'll finally be rid of him." She expelled in his features. Park backhanded her rigid enough that she experienced blood. "Spirited. I perceive why he's obsessed." He occupied eliminating his features. "Maintain her here. Utilize her to extract him inward." They secured her to a support beam, the rope severing into her wrists. Serena's cognition raced. Min Jae would arrive. She comprehended he would, and he'd ambulate straight into a trap. She had to warn him. But before she could formulate a plan, gunfire erupted external. Not scattered shots, a sustained assault that shook the structure. Park's men scrambled, vocalizing orders. He'd arrived. Despite the trap, despite the peril, Min Jae had arrived. The battle was deafening. Serena pressed herself against the beam, attempting to make herself compact as bullets tore through perimeters and bodies descended. She couldn't perceive what was occurring, but she could perceive the chaos, vocalizations, commands, the unmistakable sound of violence. Then the entrance to her chamber exploded inward. Min Jae occupied in the threshold covered in blood, his expression absolutely feral. Their gaze connected across the area and relief crashed through her so intensely she sobbed. "Contacting." Park's tone arrived from behind her. Serena perceived frigid metal press against her temple again, but predictable. Min-jae halted, his personal weapon trained on Park. Release her. Descend your weapon first. Not occurring. Then she expires. Park activated the hammer. Your selection. Serena perceived the calculation in Min-jae's gaze. The desperate mathematics of impossible situations. She couldn't permit him sacrificing himself for her. I love you, she articulated clearly, her tone severing through the tension. Whatever occurs, I love you. The destruction was sufficient. Min-jae's shot was instant, flawless, impacting Park's shoulder. The man jerked, his weapon discharging into the ceiling as he stumbled backward. Min-jae was across the chamber in a heartbeat, positioning himself between Serena and Park, firing twice more. Park descended, lifeless. Then Min-jae was severing her free, his palms shaking as he verified her for injuries. Are you damaged? Did he? I'm acceptable. She threw her arms around him, trembling violently. You arrived. Perpetually. His tone fractured. I'll perpetually arrive for you. He elevated her, transporting her through the carnage, without permitting her perceiving the worst of it. External. Dawn was breaking and his men secured the perimeter. An ambulance waited. I don't require. Humor me. He assisted her into the ambulance, climbing in alongside her, and refusing to release her palm the entire ride to the hospital. At the hospital, they treated her minor injuries, severings, bruises, rope burns. Min-jae never abandoned her vicinity, his presence fierce and protective. When they were finally solitary in a private chamber, he extracted her into his lap, burying his features in her waves. I can't execute this anymore, he articulated quietly. I can't maintain positioning you in peril. Then don't. She extracted back to observe him. Terminate it. Ambulate away from that existence. It's not that simple. Make it simple. Her palms framed his features. You possess wealth, authority, connections. Utilize them to transition legitimate. Construct something legal. I'm indifferent if we initiate over with nothing. I just desire existence where we're not constantly fleeing from expiration. He stared at her, something like hope flickering in his exhausted gaze. You'd genuinely provide up everything for you. In a heartbeat. You're extraordinary. He kissed her softly. Irrational, but extraordinary. So you'll consider it. I'll execute more than consider it. His digit traced her features. I'll make it occur. Because you're correct. I desire existence with you. An authentic one. Not this endless violence. Relief flooded through her. Commit to me. I commit. He rested his forehead against hers. No more organized criminality. No more wars. Just us. Just us, she echoed, expressing through tears. The subsequent few months were transformative. Min-jae systematically dismantled his criminal empire, selling operations to trusted allies, severing ties with hazardous partners, and utilizing his considerable resources to establish legitimate businesses. It wasn't effortless. There were threats, betrayals, tense negotiations. But Serena occupied by him through all of it. She observed him transform softer, lighter as the weight of violence elevated from his shoulders. He expressed more, responded to her terrible humor, invested afternoons in her workspace just observing her labor with accessible adoration. They relocated into a new residence together, not a fortress, but a residence with sunlight and gardens and area to respire. Serena's fashion business thrived, her reputation growing as she dressed Seoul's elite in her stunning designs. And Min-jae demonstrated himself in 100 compact manners, learning to prepare her favorite meals, attending her fashion presentations with obvious pride, supporting her dreams with the same intensity he'd once devoted to criminality. One twilight, 6 months after the manufacturing facility, Min-jae discovered her in their garden. The sun was descending, painting everything golden, and Serena was preliminary designs in her notebook. Marry me, he articulated without preamble. She elevated, startled. What? He knelt in front of her, extracting out a ring that captured the fading illumination, a stunning midnight diamond surrounded by smaller coral stones. I comprehend I should have planned some elaborate proposal, but I can't wait anymore. I require you to become my wife, Officially, legally, forever. Tears flooded her vision. That's the worst proposal I've ever perceived. Is that a negative? It's an affirmative, you fool. She launched herself at him and he captured her, spinning her around as she expressed and generated tears simultaneously. Affirmative. I'll marry you 1,000 durations. Affirmative. He slipped the ring onto her digit, then kissed her with all the passion and dedication he'd displayed her from that first day on the shore. When they finally broke apart, both respiring rigid, he expressed genuinely, radiantly. I love you, he articulated simply. More than I contemplated I could love anything. I love you too. She contacted his features tenderly. My obsessive, possessive, reformed criminal. Reformed. He grinned. I appreciate the sound of that. They married 3 months forward in a private ceremony with only proximate companions and relations. Serena displayed a gown she designed herself, elegant, stunning, showcasing her proportions in manners that made Min Jae's gaze darken with craving. He displayed one of her ensembles naturally. The ceremony was simple but flawless. When he slipped the matrimonial band onto her digit, his palms trembled marginally with emotion. When she executed the same, tears slipped down her features. You may kiss your bride, the officiant articulated with expression. Min Jae extracted her proximate, kissing her thoroughly enough that their guests expressed and cheered. When he finally released her, he murmured against her mouth. Mine. Forever. Forever, she concurred. Their reception was joyful, saturated with expression and dancing and celebration. But Serena's favorite instant arrived late in the night when Min Jae extracted her aside to a quiet balcony overlooking the metropolis. I possess something to communicate to you, she articulated, nervous energy thrumming through her. He rotated, concern flickering across his features. What's incorrect? Nothing's incorrect. Actually, she consumed a deep respiration, then expressed, I'm pregnant. The articulation suspended between them for a heartbeat. Then Min Jae's features transformed, shock providing way to wonder providing way to pure dominating joy. His palms rose to cradle her features. We're going to possess a baby. We're going to possess a baby, she confirmed, expressing as tears spilled over. He descended to his knees, pressing his features against her stomach, his shoulders shaking. Serena operated her digits through his waves, dominated by the instant. When he elevated, his gaze was wet. I don't deserve this. You this existence a relation. You execute. She extracted him up, kissing him softly. You've transformed. You've selected something superior. And you're going to become an extraordinary father. I'm terrified, he confessed. Me too. But we'll navigate it together. Together, he repeated, extracting her proximate. They occupied there on the balcony, maintaining each other as the metropolis illumination twinkled beneath. Two individuals who discovered each other in darkness and selected to construct something magnificent in the illumination. 7 months forward, Serena provided birth to a healthy baby daughter. She possessed her mother's features and her father's severe characteristics, and from the instant Min Jae maintained her, he was completely undone. Serena observed through exhausted, joyful tears as this hazardous, commanding man cradled their daughter with infinite tenderness. She's flawless, he vocalized quietly, not extracting away from the baby. What should we identify her? Hannah, Serena suggested. It signifies flower. Hannah. He tested the identity, expressing, it's flawless. He observed Serena then, and the affection in his gaze was so profound it extracted her respiration. I appreciate you accepting a chance on me, for transforming my existence, for providing me a reason to transform superior. I appreciate you for not ceasing. She extended for his palm. That day on the shore, I contemplated you were arrogant and hazardous. I possessed no awareness you'd transform into my everything. I communicated to you then I would possess you. All of you. His digit stroked her knuckles. I just didn't comprehend it would be so much superior than I imagined. Even the generation of tears and the disputes and the turbulence. Especially those elements. He inclined down, kissing her delicately. Because they're authentic. You're authentic. This relation is authentic. And I'll invest every day protecting it, cherishing it, experiencing gratitude for it. I love you, she vocalized quietly. I love you, he echoed. Both of you, forever. As she maintained their daughter and observed her husband, once a ruthless mafia leader, now a dedicated father, Serena reflected on the impossible journey that had transported them here. It had been terrifying and hazardous and completely irrational. But she wouldn't transform a singular instant, because some affections are worth the risk. Some individuals are worth the fear. And sometimes the most magnificent elements in existence are born from the darkest initiations. Their narrative had initiated with obsession, but it had transformed into something far more commanding: dedication, partnership, an affection that had survived violence and peril and doubt. And as Min-jae pressed a kiss to his daughter's forehead, then to Serena's mouth, she comprehended with absolute certainty that this was only the initiation. Their forever was just commencing. Epilogue: 2 years forward, the fashion workspace had tripled in magnitude. Serena's designs now pursued internationally. In the corner workspace, she labored on preliminary drawings while Hannah performed on a soft mat proximate, babbling joyfully at her toys. Min-jae materialized in the threshold, residence early from his legitimate import business. His gaze discovered his wife and daughter immediately, and that soft expression, the one reserved exclusively for them, transformed his features. "How are my girls?" He crossed the chamber, scooping up Hannah, who vocalized with delight. "Flawless." Serena occupied, extending, and he extracted her in with his free arm, kissing her thoroughly. "I possess news," he articulated when they broke apart. The investor arrangement progressed through. "We're accessing workspaces in 3 new metropolises." "That's extraordinary." "It is." His palm discovered her torso, extracting her nearer. "But more importantly, I made reservations at that establishment you appreciate. Date night. You comprehend we possess a toddler, correct? Already arranged. My mother is thrilled to supervise." He grinned. "I desire transporting my wife out, and reminding her why she married me. I remember flawlessly." She traced the ink design on his palm, the small serpent she'd once discovered so hazardous and now discovered reassuring. "You wouldn't accept negative as response. And I never will." His tone descended, intense. "You belong to me, Serena. Forever." "Forever," she concurred, kissing him again. Later that night, after dinner and dancing and vocalized commitments, they returned to residence to discover Hannah sleeping and the residence quiet. In their bedroom, Min-jae extracted Serena proximate, his palms mapping familiar proportions with reverent possession. "I descend more in affection with you every day," he confessed. "Is that possible with you?" "Absolutely." She expressed against his chest cavity. "You're nothing if not excessive. Exclusively regarding you. I wouldn't possess it any alternative manner." They made love deliberately, tenderly, with the variety of intimacy that arrives from genuinely comprehending another individual. And afterward, encircled in each other's arms, they drifted toward sleep. "Min-jae," Serena murmured drowsily. I appreciate you for not providing up that day on the shore. If you'd permitted me ambulating away." "Impossible." His arms constricted around her. "From the instant I perceived you, you were mine. I just had to convince you. Consider me convinced." He expressed softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Excellent, because I'm never permitting you departing." "I comprehend." She expressed in the darkness. "That's what I appreciate regarding you." And as she descended sleeping in the arms of the man who had once been ruthless and hazardous but had transformed into her everything, Serena comprehended that their affection narrative, born from obsession, forged through peril and tempered by selection, was the greatest adventure of her existence. Some individuals might articulate he'd claimed her, but the truth was simpler and more magnificent. They'd claimed each other forever. You made it to the end, and that means you're truly part of the Gloria Afro-Korean Stories family. Thank you for your support. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be replying as always. And stay subscribed because the next story is already waiting for you.